The morning sun cast long shadows across New Haven Colony as Jake Morrison checked the defense systems one more time. The mining settlement on Kepler 442c had been quiet for months, with only the steady hum of extractors pulling rare metals from the moon's core breaking the silence. 3,000 colonists called this place home, and Jake was responsible for keeping them safe. Jake was a soldier before he became a colony captain. He had fought in the Mars conflicts and served on deep space patrol ships. When the military offered him this posting, he thought it would be easy duty. A peaceful mining colony on the edge of human space seemed like a good place to finish his career. He was wrong. The alarm started screaming at 0800 hours. Jake ran to the command center where Lisa Parker was staring at her screens with wide eyes. Lisa ran the orbital defense station that watched over New Haven from high above the moon's surface. She was one of the best radar operators in the fleet, and Jake had never seen her look scared before. "Captain, you need to see this," Lisa said, her voice tight with worry. "We have a contact coming in from deep space. It's big, sir. Really big." Jake looked at the display and felt cold fear run down his spine. The object was massive, easily 10 times larger than the biggest human ships. It moved through space like a living thing, its surface rippling and changing as it approached. The computer could not identify what it was made of or where it came from. "How long until it reaches us?" Jake asked. 2 hours, maybe less," Lisa replied. "It's slowing down now, like it wants to stop here." Jake opened the colony-wide communication channel. His voice echoed through every building and tunnel in New Haven. "This is Captain Morrison. We have an unidentified vessel approaching our position. All civilian personnel should report to designated shelter areas immediately. This is not a drill." The colony erupted into controlled chaos. Families grabbed emergency supplies and headed for the underground bunkers. Workers shut down the mining equipment and secured the heavy machinery. Security teams led by Amy Rodriguez took positions around the colony's outer walls. Amy was tough as nails and twice as sharp. She had grown up on the rough mining stations near Jupiter and knew how to fight. Her team trusted her completely, and Jake was glad to have her on his side. But as he watched the alien ship get closer, he wondered if even Amy's skills would be enough. "Any response to our communications?" Jake asked Lisa over the radio. "Nothing, sir. I've tried every frequency we know. Standard greeting protocols, mathematical sequences, even music. The ship just keeps coming." The alien vessel settled into high orbit above New Haven Colony. It hung there like a dark cloud, blocking out part of the sky. Its surface seemed to pulse with a strange light that hurt to look at directly. Then, without warning, it began to release smaller objects. "Drop pods," Amy reported from her position on the outer wall. "Count 12 objects heading for the surface. They're coming in fast." Jake grabbed his rifle and ran outside. The drop pods screamed through the thin atmosphere like meteors, leaving trails of fire in their wake. They hit the ground around the colony with tremendous force, sending up clouds of dust and debris. The first pod landed about half a mile from the main gate. Jake and his team approached it carefully, weapons ready. The pod was organic, looking like a giant seed or egg. It was warm to the touch and seemed to be breathing. "Stay back," Jake ordered his men. "We don't know what's inside." The pod split, open with a wet, tearing sound. Something climbed out slowly, unfolding itself in the weak sunlight. Jake had seen a lot of strange things in his years in space, but nothing had prepared him for this. The creature stood 12 feet tall on powerful legs that ended in razor-sharp claws. Its body was covered in armor that looked like it had grown, naturally shifting between deep purple and black as Jake watched. Forearms moved with deadly grace, each ending in hands that could tear through steel. But it was the head that made Jake's blood freeze. The skull was long and narrow, filled with rows of crystal teeth that caught the light like diamonds. 6 eyes arranged in 3 pairs looked in different directions at once, glowing with an inner fire that seemed to see everything. The creature turned its attention to the humans, and Jake felt like he was being studied by something far more intelligent than he had ever imagined. "Hold your fire," Jake whispered to his team, though every instinct told him to shoot. The creature had not attacked yet, and he wanted to see what it would do. The alien took a step forward, then another. It moved like a predator, every motion calculated and precise. When it was 50 feet away, it stopped and made a sound that was part growl, part song. The harmonics made Jake's teeth ache. Amy's voice crackled over the radio. "Captain, I have visual on 3 more creatures. They're taking positions around the colony. It looks like they're surrounding us." Jake never took his eyes off the alien in front of him. "Do not engage unless they attack first. Fall back to the secondary perimeter." The creature watched the humans retreat with what might have been curiosity. It made no move to follow them. But Jake could feel those burning eyes tracking every step. When the team reached the colony walls, the alien settled down on its haunches like a giant cat and waited. Over the next few hours, more pods landed. Each one contained a single creature identical to the first. By evening, 7 of the aliens had positioned themselves around New Haven Colony, just out of weapons range but close enough to watch every move the humans made. Dr. Helen Foster arrived at the command center carrying a tablet full of data. Helen was the colony's scientist who studied alien life forms. She was brilliant and fearless, but Jake could see worry in her eyes. "I've been analyzing the video footage," Helen said. "These creatures are unlike anything in our databases. Their armor appears to be biological, but it's harder than any material we know. The way they move suggests incredible strength and speed." "What about weapons?" Jake asked. "I don't see any obvious ones, but with those claws and that bite, they don't need much else." "Captain, I think they're intelligent, very intelligent. The way they position themselves shows tactical thinking." Jake nodded grimly. "Any idea what they want?" "That's what worries me," Helen replied. "They're not attacking, but they're not leaving either. It's like they're waiting for something." As night fell over New Haven Colony, the aliens remained in their positions. Their eyes glowed brighter in the darkness, creating an eerie ring of light around the settlement. The colonists huddled in their shelters, afraid to sleep. Jake stood on the command center's observation deck, watching the creatures. Through night vision scopes, they barely moved, but he could sense their alertness. Whatever they were planning, it would happen soon. "Sir," Lisa's voice came through his earpiece, "I'm picking up energy readings from the creatures. It's like they're communicating, but not on any frequency we can detect." Jake felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold night air. If these aliens could coordinate their actions without human detection, New Haven Colony was in serious trouble. He looked at the peaceful settlement below, filled with families, who trusted him to keep them safe. Tomorrow would bring answers, but Jake feared those answers would not be good ones. The creatures had traveled across the galaxy to reach this remote moon, and they had come prepared for war. All he could do was prepare his people for whatever was coming and hope that human determination would be enough to face the unknown threat that waited in the darkness beyond the walls. The second day began with more drop pods falling from the alien ship. Jake watched through his binoculars as 3 more creatures emerged from their organic containers. They moved with the same deadly grace as the first group, taking positions that completed a perfect circle around New Haven Colony. 10 of them now, Amy reported from her position on the south wall. "They're not just surrounding us anymore, Captain. They're studying us." Jake had noticed it too. The creatures would shift position every few hours, always staying just out of range of the colony's weapons, but they were getting closer, testing the human defenses bit by bit. When the security teams moved, the aliens would tilt their heads and watch with those burning 6 eyes. When new equipment appeared on the walls, the creatures would make low sounds to each other. Dr. Helen Foster had been working around the clock trying to understand what they were facing. She called Jake to her laboratory in the early morning, her face pale from lack of sleep. "I've been studying their behavior patterns," Helen said, showing Jake video recordings on her computer. "Watch this sequence from yesterday afternoon." The Guo video showed one of the creatures approaching the eastern wall. When Amy's team aimed their plasma rifles at it, the alien immediately changed direction and moved away. But it came back an hour later, this time approaching from a different angle. "It's learning," Helen continued. "Not just this one creature, but all of them. They share information somehow. When one discovers something about our defenses, they all know about it within minutes." Jake felt sick to his stomach. "You're saying they're getting smarter about how to attack us?" "I'm saying they already know how to attack us," Helen replied. They're just waiting for the right moment. The communication system crackled to life. It was Bobby Chen, the young engineer who maintained the colony's mining equipment. His voice was excited and hopeful. "Captain Morrison, I think I have an idea. What if we use the industrial laser cutters as weapons? They're designed to slice through solid rock. They might be able to get through that armor." Jake considered it. The mining lasers were powerful tools, much stronger than regular weapons. "Set it up, Bobby, but be careful. I don't want to provoke them until we're ready." While Bobby worked on modifying the mining equipment, Jake tried once more to contact the outside world. Every human colony in this sector had gone silent. The alien ship was somehow blocking all communications beyond the moon's orbit. New Haven was completely alone. Lisa's voice came through the radio from the orbital station. "Captain, I'm detecting energy buildups in the creatures. Whatever they're planning, I think they're getting ready to do it." Jake called all department heads to an emergency meeting. Amy arrived first, her combat armor scratched and dirty from 3 days of constant vigilance. Helen came next, carrying her tablet and looking worried. Bobby showed up last, his hands covered in grease from working on the laser systems. "We need to face facts," Jake told them. "These aliens didn't come here by accident. They're planning something, and when they move, we need to be ready." "The evacuation shelters are full," Amy reported. "All civilians are underground except for essential personnel. But Captain, those shelters weren't built to withstand this kind of attack." Helen pulled up her analysis on the wall screen. "I've identified behavioral differences between individual creatures. The largest one seems to be their leader. It makes decisions that the others follow. If we could somehow disable that one—" "It won't work," Bobby interrupted. "I've been watching them too. When one moves, they all adjust their positions instantly. They're connected somehow, like a hive mind." Jake studied the tactical display showing the creatures' positions around the colony. Red dots marked where each alien waited in the growing darkness. 10 monsters, each one capable of destroying everything the colonists had built. "How long can we hold out if they attack?" Jake asked Amy. "With standard weapons? Maybe 6 hours if we're lucky," she replied honestly. "The modified mining lasers might give us 12 hours. But Captain, I don't think time is going to help us. These things are too smart and too strong." That night, Jake walked the colony walls with Amy and her security team. The aliens had moved closer during the day, now positioned just 300 yards from the outer defenses. In the darkness, their glowing eyes created an eerie constellation around New Haven. "They're beautiful in a way," Amy said quietly, watching one of the creatures through her scope. "Terrifying, but beautiful." Jake nodded. The aliens moved with a grace that was almost hypnotic. Their armored bodies caught the starlight, and their harmonious calls carried across the empty landscape like some ancient song. If they weren't preparing to destroy everything Jake cared about, he might have admired them. "Movement on the north wall," came a voice over the radio. Jake and Amy ran to the northern section where they found 2 of the creatures approaching the defensive barriers. They moved slowly, deliberately, like they were giving the humans time to react. When the security team raised their weapons, the aliens stopped and waited. "What are they doing?" Amy whispered. "Testing us again," Jake replied. "They want to see how we respond." The larger of the 2 creatures made a series of low, musical sounds. The other replied with similar tones. Then, without warning, the first alien sprinted toward the wall. It moved impossibly fast for something so large. The security team opened fire with plasma rifles, but the energy bolts bounced off the creature's armor like raindrops. It reached the wall in seconds and leaped 30 feet straight up, landing on the defensive barrier with barely a sound. The humans scattered as the alien surveyed the colony's interior. Its 6 eyes swept across the buildings, the equipment, the terrified faces of the security team. It made more musical sounds, possibly communicating what it saw to the other creatures. "Nobody move," Jake ordered through gritted teeth. "Don't. Give it a reason to attack." The creature studied Jake for a long moment, its alien intelligence evident in those burning eyes. Then it made a sound that might have been amusement and jumped back down to the ground outside the wall. It rejoined its companion and both aliens returned to their waiting positions. "They're playing with us," Amy said, her voice shaking with anger and fear. "They could have killed us all just now, but they chose not to." Jake realized she was right. The creature had demonstrated that the colony's walls were no barrier at all. It could have slaughtered the security team or destroyed vital equipment. Instead, it had simply looked around and left. "They're not ready to attack yet," Jake said. "They're still learning about us." Dr. Helen Foster's voice came through the communication system. "Captain, you need to come to the lab immediately. I've discovered something important." Jake and Amy hurried to Helen's laboratory, where they found her staring at complex wave patterns on her computer screen. "I've been analyzing the sounds the creatures make," Helen explained. "At first I thought it was just animal communication, but it's much more sophisticated than that. Captain, I think they're trying to talk to us." "Talk to us about what?" Jake asked. "I don't know yet. The patterns are too complex for our translation systems, but some of the harmonics match mathematical sequences. Others might be star maps or navigation data. Whatever they're saying, it's intelligent communication." Jake felt a spark of hope. If the aliens were trying to communicate, maybe there was a chance for peaceful contact. Maybe they didn't have to fight. That hope died when the creatures began moving at dawn. All 10 aliens rose from their positions and started walking toward the colony walls. They moved in perfect synchronization, their steps creating a rhythmic thunder that shook the ground. The siege of New Haven Colony was about to begin. The attack began at sunrise on the 4th day. Jake watched from the command center as all 10 creatures moved toward the colony walls in perfect formation. They no longer moved like curious observers. Now they moved like hunters who had finished, studying their prey. "All units to battle stations," Jake announced over the colony-wide communication system. "This is not a drill. The aliens are attacking." Amy's security teams took their positions along the walls. The modified mining lasers that Bobby had installed hummed to life, their targeting systems tracking the approaching creatures. Every weapon in the colony was aimed and ready to fire. "Wait for my signal," Jake told his defenders. "Let them get close enough that we can't miss." The creatures advanced steadily across the empty ground between their positions and the colony walls. They made no sound except for the rhythmic thudding of their clawed feet against the rocky surface. Their 6 eyes glowed brighter in the morning light, and their armored bodies seemed to ripple with contained energy. When the aliens reached the 200-yard mark, Jake gave the order. "Open fire!" The colony's defenses erupted in a blaze of light and sound. Plasma rifles sent streams of superheated energy toward the creatures. The mining lasers fired concentrated beams that could cut through solid rock. Explosive charges that Bobby had planted around the perimeter detonated in sequence, sending clouds of debris and smoke into the air. For a moment, Jake felt hope. The firepower was tremendous, far greater than anything the aliens had faced during their earlier probing attacks. Surely nothing could survive that kind of concentrated assault. Then the smoke cleared, and Jake's heart sank. All 10 creatures were still standing. Their armor showed scorch marks and small dents, but they were essentially unharmed. Worse, they had used the confusion of the attack to move closer to the walls. "Impossible," Amy breathed over the radio. "Those mining lasers should have cut them in half." The largest creature, the one Helen had identified as their leader, looked directly at Jake's position in the command center. Even from a distance, Jake could see intelligence and something that might have been amusement in those burning eyes. The alien opened its mouth and made a sound that carried clearly across the battlefield. It sounded almost like laughter. "Second wave, fire at will," Jake ordered desperately. The humans poured everything they had into the attack. Rocket launchers fired armor-piercing missiles. Heavy machine guns sent streams of bullets toward the creatures. Even the emergency flares were modified into makeshift weapons. The aliens absorbed the punishment without slowing down. The bullets bounced off their natural armor. The missiles exploded against their bodies but caused no serious damage. One creature actually caught a rocket in its bare hands and crushed it before the warhead could detonate. "They're adapting to our weapons in real time," Helen reported from her monitoring station. "Every shot we fire, they learn how to defend against it better." The creatures reached the outer wall and began to climb. They moved up the concrete barriers like giant spiders, their claws finding purchase in the smallest cracks. The security teams fired down at them from point-blank range, but the plasma bolts just sparked harmlessly off their armored backs. The first alien reached the top of the wall where Amy and her team were waiting. Amy emptied her entire power pack into the creature's chest at close range. The plasma burst left glowing marks on its armor but did not slow it down. The alien reached out with one of its 4 arms and gently pushed Amy aside. She flew 20 feet through the air and landed hard against a storage building. The creature could have killed her easily, but it chose not to. Instead, it jumped down into the colony's courtyard and began examining the human buildings and equipment. Fall. Back to the secondary perimeter, Jake ordered. All civilians to the emergency shelters immediately. The aliens moved through the colony like they owned it. They did not destroy anything unnecessarily, but they made it clear that the human defenses were useless against them. When Bobby tried to activate a hidden laser cannon, one of the creatures disabled it with surgical precision, removing only the parts needed to make it harmless. Jake and his remaining security forces retreated to the colony's main community center, a reinforced building designed to serve as a last resort shelter. The structure had thick walls and multiple levels, with the most secure areas deep underground. "How many people do we have left fighting?" Jake asked Amy as she limped into the command post, holding her injured arm. "Maybe 30 security personnel," she replied. "The rest are either unconscious or hiding with the civilians. Captain, we can't fight these things. Our weapons are useless against them." Dr. Helen Foster appeared at Jake's side, her tablet showing readings that made no sense. "Captain, I've been monitoring their energy signatures during the attack. These creatures are not just physically superior to us. They're using some kind of technology we don't understand." "What do you mean?" Jake asked. "Their armor isn't just biological. It's responding to our weapons and adapting in real time. It's like they have built-in shields that learn and improve with every attack." Jake looked out through the reinforced windows at the aliens moving through his colony. They were not ransacking the place or destroying it randomly. Instead, they were methodically examining everything, like scientists studying a new discovery. "What do they want?" Jake wondered aloud. "If they wanted to kill us all, they could have done it by now. Maybe they want us alive for some reason," Amy suggested grimly. The aliens spent hours exploring the colony while the humans cowered in their shelter. Jake could hear them moving around outside, their clawed feet clicking against the metal walkways. Sometimes they would make their musical sounds to each other, as if discussing what they found. As evening approached, the creatures gathered in the main courtyard directly outside the community center. Their leader stepped forward and made a series of complex harmonic sounds directed at the building where the humans were hiding. "It's trying to communicate again," Helen said, listening to the audio pickup. "The patterns are more complex than before. I think it's giving us some kind of message. Can you translate any of it?" Jake asked hopefully. Helen shook her head. "The mathematics are beyond our understanding, but Captain, I think they're giving us an ultimatum. They want us to come out." Jake considered their options. The community center was well built, but it would not hold against the aliens if they decided to force their way in. The creatures had already proven that human engineering was no match for their capabilities. "Maybe we should try to talk to them," Jake said. "If they wanted us dead, we would be dead already." Before anyone could respond, the building shook violently. One of the aliens had struck the outer wall with tremendous force. Cracks appeared in the reinforced concrete and dust rained down from the ceiling. "They're getting impatient," Amy observed. The building shook again, harder this time. More cracks appeared, and Jake realized that their shelter would not protect them much longer. The aliens were being careful not to cause a complete collapse, but they were making their point clear. In the deepest part of the shelter, the colony's children huddled together with their families. Most were crying or clinging to their parents, in terror. But one little girl sat quietly in the corner, watching everything with curious eyes instead of fear. 8-year-old Lucy Martinez had been unusually calm throughout the entire siege. While the adults panicked and despaired, she observed the aliens with the fearless curiosity that only children possess. She had noticed things that the grown-ups missed, and she had been thinking about what the creatures might really want. The building shook a third time, and Jake knew their time was running out. Whatever the aliens were planning, it would happen soon. The siege of New Haven Colony was about to reach its final chapter. The final assault began at midnight. The aliens had spent the entire day circling the community center, making their musical sounds and testing the building's defenses. Now they were ready to finish what they had started. Jake stood in the main shelter area, surrounded by the last survivors of New Haven Colony. 300 people pressed together in the reinforced underground chamber, their faces pale with fear. Children cried softly while their parents held them close. The older colonists sat quietly, accepting their fate with grim dignity. "The outer doors won't hold much longer," Amy reported from her position at the security monitors. Her arm was in a makeshift sling, but she still gripped her plasma rifle with her good hand. "They're cutting through the reinforced steel like it's paper." The sound of tearing metal echoed through the building above them. The aliens were not using brute force this time. Instead, they were carefully dismantling the human defenses piece by piece, showing a precise understanding of engineering and construction that terrified Jake even more than their physical strength. Dr. Helen Foster sat at her portable workstation, still trying to analyze the creature's communication patterns. Her tablet showed waveforms and mathematical sequences that made no sense to human science. She had been working for days without sleep, driven by the desperate hope that understanding might lead to survival. "Any progress?" Jake asked her quietly. Helen shook her head, frustration clear in her voice. "Their language is too complex. It operates on frequencies and harmonics that our brains can't process properly. It's like trying to hear colors or see music. We're just not built for it." A tremendous crash shook the entire building. Dust fell from the ceiling, and several people screamed. The aliens had broken through the main entrance and were now inside the community center. Jake could hear their clawed feet clicking against the floor above as they searched the building systematically. "They know we're down here," Amy said, watching the security cameras. "They're heading straight for the shelter entrance." Jake looked around at the frightened faces surrounding him. These people had trusted him to keep them safe, and he had failed them completely. The most advanced weapons humanity could build were useless against these creatures. All of human technology and ingenuity meant nothing in the face of such overwhelming superiority. "I'm sorry," Jake said to the crowded shelter. "I'm sorry I couldn't protect you." The heavy doors to the underground shelter began to buckle inward. The aliens were not trying to break them down with force. Instead, they were using some kind of energy that made the metal glow and soften like heated butter. The process was slow and deliberate, giving the humans time to think about what was coming. In the corner of the shelter, 8-year-old Lucy Martinez sat with her parents, Maria and Carlos. While everyone else watched the doors in terror, Lucy studied the sounds coming from above. She had been listening to the aliens' musical communications for days, and patterns were starting to form in her young mind. "They're not angry," Lucy said suddenly, her small voice cutting through the fearful whispers. Her father looked down at her with surprise. "What did you say, sweetheart?" "The sounds they make," Lucy explained, tilting her head to listen better. "They're not angry sounds, they're more like questions." Dr. Helen Foster heard this and moved closer to the family. "What do you mean, Lucy?" "What kind of questions?" Lucy thought for a moment, trying to find the right words. "Like when you meet someone new and you want to know if they're nice or mean. That's what it sounds like to me." Helen stared at the little girl with growing excitement. "Children's brains are more flexible than adult brains. They can learn languages easier and hear sounds that adults can't. Lucy, have you been understanding what they're saying?" Before Lucy could answer, the shelter doors finally gave way. The softened metal peeled back like flower petals, and the largest alien stepped through the opening. Its massive form filled the doorway, and its 6 burning eyes surveyed the huddled humans with alien intelligence. The creature's armor gleamed in the artificial light, showing the scars from the colony's desperate attacks. It moved with careful grace, avoiding the low ceiling and the frightened people who pressed back against the walls. The other aliens remained outside, giving their leader space to work. Jake stepped forward, placing himself between the creature and the civilians. He had no weapon that could hurt the alien, but he would not die cowering in a corner. Amy joined him, her injured arm forgotten as she raised her rifle one last time. The alien looked at them both and made a soft sound that might have been approval. Then it ignored them completely and began scanning the crowd of humans with those terrible, beautiful eyes. The creature was looking for something specific. Its gaze passed over the adults and teenagers, lingering briefly on Dr. Foster and her equipment, then moving on. When its eyes found Lucy Martinez sitting quietly in the corner, it stopped. The alien stared at the little girl for a long moment. Lucy stared back without fear, her head tilted in that curious way she had developed while listening to their communications. The creature made a series of low, musical sounds directed specifically at her. "It's talking to you," Helen whispered, to Lucy. "Do you understand what it's saying?" Lucy nodded slowly. "It wants to know if I can hear them properly. It's asking if I'm ready to listen." The alien made more sounds, more complex this time. Lucy listened carefully, her young mind processing frequencies and harmonics that the adults around her could not detect. When the creature finished, she took a deep breath and did something that made everyone in the shelter gasp. She stepped away from her parents and walked toward the massive alien. Her small feet made tiny sounds against the concrete floor as she crossed the space between them. The creature watched her approach, its posture shifting from threatening to something that almost looked like curiosity. When Lucy was standing directly in front of the alien, she looked up at its towering form and opened her mouth. What came out was not English or any human language. Instead, she produced a series of harmonic tones that perfectly matched the creature's own communications. The effect was immediate and shocking. The alien stepped backward as if struck, its 6 eyes widening with what looked like surprise and wonder. It responded with complex musical phrases that filled the shelter with beautiful, otherworldly sound. Lucy listened carefully, then replied in the same harmonic language. Her young voice managed frequencies that should have been impossible for human vocal cords to produce, but somehow she made the sounds perfectly. The conversation lasted only a few minutes, but Jake could see that everything was changing. The alien's aggressive posture softened into something resembling respect. Its burning eyes no longer looked at the humans with predatory calculation, but with what might have been recognition. When the exchange ended, Lucy turned to face the frightened adults. Her eyes were bright with understanding and excitement. "They're not here to hurt us," she announced to the silent shelter. "They've been looking for us for a very long time. They came here to see if we were the right kind of people." Dr. Foster knelt down beside Lucy, her scientific mind racing with questions. "The right kind of people for what, sweetheart?" Lucy looked back at the alien, who made encouraging sounds in response to her unspoken question. She nodded and turned back to the adults. "They need our help," Lucy said simply. "There are bad things coming from far away, and they can't stop them alone. They wanted to make sure we were brave and good before they asked us to be their friends." The alien made one more series of musical tones, this time directed at all the humans in the shelter. Lucy listened and translated. "It says the testing is over. We passed." The transformation began immediately. As soon as Lucy finished translating the alien's words, the creature's entire demeanor changed. The threatening predator that had terrorized New Haven Colony for days became something else entirely. It moved, with the same grace, but now there was gentleness in its actions. The alien leader made more musical sounds, and Lucy listened carefully before turning to the frightened humans around her. "He says his name is something like Keeper of the Seventh Path," Lucy explained, her young voice struggling with concepts that had no human equivalent. "He's sorry they scared us, but they had to be sure about what kind of people we are." Jake stepped forward cautiously, his mind reeling from this sudden change. "Sure about what? What were they testing us for?" Lucy asked the question in the alien's harmonic language. The creature responded with a long series of complex tones that made the air itself seem to vibrate. When it finished, Lucy's face was serious beyond her years. "There are bad things in space, Cam," she said simply. "Really bad things that destroy planets and kill everyone on them. His people have been fighting them for longer than humans have existed. They travel around looking for other good people who might help them. Dr. Foster approached slowly, her scientific curiosity overcoming her fear. Lucy, ask him about their technology. How do they travel between stars? How do their weapons work? After another exchange in the musical language, Lucy shook her head. He says those things aren't important right now. What matters is that humans are brave and care about protecting others. That's what they were looking for. The alien made a gesture with one of its 4 arms, and the other creatures began entering the shelter. But instead of the menacing invasion, the humans expected it was more like a formal introduction. Each alien approached specific groups of colonists and made gentle sounds that Lucy translated as greetings. They want to learn about us the same way we want to learn about them, Lucy explained as she watched the careful interactions. They've never met people like humans before. Over the following hours, an extraordinary transformation took place in the shelter. The aliens, who Lucy explained called themselves something like Star Guardians, began sharing information about the galaxy beyond human space. Through Lucy's translations, the colonists learned that their corner of space was part of a vast region that had been peaceful for thousands of years. But ancient enemies called the Devourers were beginning to stir in the dark spaces between galaxies. These creatures consumed entire worlds, leaving nothing but empty space behind them. The Star Guardians have been preparing for their return, Lucy translated as the alien leader continued his explanation. They've been looking for new allies who have the right qualities to help in the fight. What qualities? Jake asked. Lucy listened to the response and smiled. Courage when things look hopeless, the ability to protect people weaker than themselves, and most important, the willingness to help strangers even when it's dangerous. Amy, still nursing her injured arm, looked skeptical. How did attacking our colony prove any of that? The alien leader made apologetic sounds when Lucy relayed the question. He says they had to see how we would react under pressure. They needed to know if we would abandon each other or stick together. They also had to test our determination and creativity. Dr. Foster was taking notes on her tablet, trying to record everything. Lucy, ask them about their communication method. How are you able to understand them when our computers can't? The response made Lucy giggle, which seemed strange after everything they had been through. He says adult brains get stuck thinking in only one way. Children's brains are still flexible enough to learn new kinds of language. That's why they were waiting for a child to talk to them. Bobby Chen, the engineer who had worked so hard to modify their weapons, raised his hand tentatively. What about our technology? Can they help us build better defenses for when these Devourers come back? The alien leader made encouraging sounds. Through Lucy, he explained that the Star Guardians had technology that could protect entire solar systems, but more importantly, they had knowledge about how to work together across different species. He says humans have something his people lost a long time ago. Lucy translated, we still know how to hope even when everything looks impossible. That's a kind of strength that can't be built or taught. As the night continued, the practical details of this new alliance began to emerge. The Star Guardians would establish a permanent base in the New Haven system. They would share their defensive technology and teach humans how to detect the approach of the Devourers. In return, humans would serve as scouts and communicators, using their adaptability and creativity to help coordinate the defense of this entire region of space. Lucy would be the first of many human children trained to communicate between the species. Will other colonies be tested like we were? Jake asked. Lucy relayed the question and nodded at the response. Yes, but differently. Each time. Each group of humans will face challenges that show their true character. But now that they know humans are good allies, the test won't be as scary. Dr. Foster had been thinking about the bigger picture. Lucy, ask them how long we have before these Devourers arrive. The answer made everyone in the shelter grow quiet. Maybe 100 years, maybe more, Lucy translated. But when they come, they'll bring enough ships to darken the stars. Every world in their path will need to be ready. Jake realized the enormous scope of what they were being asked to join. This wasn't just about defending New Haven Colony or even Earth. This was about preparing for a war that would determine the survival of countless civilizations across the galaxy. "Tell them we accept," Jake said firmly. "Humanity will stand with the Star Guardians against the Devourers." The alien leader made sounds that Lucy translated as gratitude and respect. Then he did something unexpected. The massive creature carefully lowered itself until it was kneeling before the small girl who had made communication possible. "He says I'm the bridge between our peoples now," Lucy explained, blushing at the attention. "But he also says every human in this room is a hero for passing their test." Amy looked around at her fellow colonists, seeing them with new eyes. They had faced impossible odds and never given up on each other. They had protected the innocent even when their own lives were in danger. Without realizing it, they had proven humanity worthy of joining something greater than themselves. The siege of New Haven Colony was over, but the real adventure was just beginning. Within days, Star Guardian ships would arrive carrying technology and knowledge that would transform human civilization. Children across human space would learn the harmonic languages needed to communicate with dozens of alien species. But all of that started here, in an underground shelter with a frightened little girl who chose curiosity over fear and spoke one word that changed the galaxy forever. As dawn broke over New Haven Colony, the Star Guardians and humans worked together to repair the damage from the testing. The aliens' advanced technology made the work go quickly, but more importantly, it gave both species a chance to learn about each other. Lucy sat on a piece of rubble, watching the impossible sight of humans and aliens working side by side. The Mao word she had spoken seemed so simple now, but she was beginning to understand its power. Friend was more than just a word. It was a promise, a choice, and a hope for the future. And sometimes that was enough to save the galaxy.